When the Galactic Archives finally reopened the file labeled Sol 3, Quarantined, it had been sealed for over 400 years. Most assumed the world once known as Earth was long dead, a forgotten cradle scorched by its own madness. The Council historians, cautious by nature, debated reopening contact for decades. But the younger species, restless and bold, pressed harder. The Faryun trade clans wanted the mineral rights. The D-Rex militarists wanted proof that the Death Worlder myths were exaggerations, and the Aurelian scholars wanted answers, to understand why the most dangerous world ever charted had gone utterly silent. For centuries the transmissions had stopped, the satellites gone dark, the beacons cold. Humanity had vanished from the galactic network, leaving nothing but rumors and fear behind. No one could explain how a species once expanding faster than light itself had simply gone quiet. Captain Tyrax of the D-Rex Dominion was the first to volunteer for the mission. He was ambitious, young by his kind standards, eager to make his mark. His ship, the Vigilant Spear, carried a mixed crew, scientists, soldiers, explorers, from half a dozen allied species. Their objective was simple: re-enter Sol space, record evidence of human extinction, and confirm Earth's status for reclamation. Officially, it was a reconnaissance mission. Unofficially, it was an act of defiance. The Council's oldest law was clear: do not disturb the worlds that silence themselves. But Tyrax did not believe in old ghosts. He believed in opportunity. When they first entered the system, nothing greeted them but static. The outer probes found no signs of orbital defense, no automated transmissions, no heat signatures larger than a meteor. The planets were where the archives said they'd be, though some had shifted slightly in their orbits. Mars was dusted in new glaciers. Venus still boiled under its eternal storm. But Earth was wrong. It looked alive. The continents shimmered with green, the oceans impossibly blue, cloud systems swirling with perfect symmetry. The scans showed no pollution, no satellites, no artificial signatures at all. It was as if the planet had healed itself. "They're gone," said the Aurelian scholar, voice trembling through her translator. "Completely gone." Tyrax folded his arms. "Then it's ours." They began their descent 2 rotations later. The first shuttles touched down near what had once been the eastern coast of North America. From orbit, the ruins had been faint, overgrown, hidden beneath endless forests. But from the ground, they were breathtaking. Towering metal skeletons stood half-buried in vines, crumbling towers reaching for the sky like frozen titans. Rivers ran through the streets of old cities. The team wandered through the husks of human civilization, recording, collecting, marveling. "No energy readings," one technician muttered. "No radiation, no power cores. It's like they erased themselves." Tyrax smiled. "Then they left their world to us as a gift." The first sign that something was wrong came that night. The camp's perimeter sensors began to fail one by one. Static hissed through the comms. The engineers blamed interference from the planet's magnetic field, though none of them could explain the rhythmic pulse that echoed through the ground every few minutes. Too regular to be natural, too deep to be mechanical. When dawn came, they found that the forest around their landing site had grown. The trees had shifted in the night, closer. The scout drones, sent out to map the region, never returned. By midday, 2 crewmen were missing. "Predators," said Tyrax. "Death world ecology. Stay alert." But the Aurelian scholar Lyra shook her head. "No signs of struggle," she said. "No tracks, no blood. They're just gone." On the 3rd day they found a wall. It stretched across the valley, ancient and immense, made not of stone but of something smooth and dark that shimmered under their lights. It hummed faintly when touched, alive in a way no material should be. Lyra ran her instruments over it and frowned. "Organic resonance," she whispered. "It's growing." The crew stared at the carvings etched into its surface. Spirals, constellations, symbols none could read. Tyrax ordered samples taken, but every tool that touched the wall corroded instantly, eaten away by unseen force. The air temperature dropped 5 degrees. Their communications flickered again, this time with something like a whisper woven through the static. "Turn back," it said, faint but unmistakable. The crew froze. Lyra's eyes widened. "That was human," she breathed. They retreated to camp, but unease had settled like poison. Some of the soldiers began hearing voices in their sleep, soft, pleading, almost kind. Others saw shapes in the trees, flashes of light that moved like reflections of people who weren't there. Tyrax ignored the warnings, convincing himself it was atmospheric hallucination. He was not about to let superstition rob him of discovery. That night, he transmitted a report back to orbit. It never arrived. The Vigilant Spear's crew attempted to re-establish contact, but all they received in return was a single burst of code. An old, ancient pattern. Lyra recognized it immediately. It was Morse. The message was short. "Leave." Tyrax ordered a withdrawal the next morning, but the shuttles wouldn't start. Their power cells drained to zero the moment they were connected. Their weapons failed next, followed by their suits. Within hours, every piece of advanced equipment lay dead. The planet itself seemed to drink their technology dry. Panic spread through the ranks. Lyra spent hours translating the symbols they had seen on the wall, desperate for an answer. When she finally spoke, her voice shook. "It's not a wall," she said. "It's a marker. A warning." Tyrax's claws tightened on his rifle. "A warning of what?" She swallowed hard. "Of them." At dusk, the forest began to move. Not sway, not rustle, move. Trees shifted positions, roots slithering through the soil like serpents. The sky darkened unnaturally fast, as if the light itself were being devoured. The pulse in the ground quickened until it became a steady vibration, like the heartbeat of the world. Shapes appeared in the fog. Tall, humanoid, indistinct. They didn't walk. They simply were. One moment empty space, the next filled with figures of shadow and faint light. The air turned cold enough to frost the ground. Tyrax shouted orders, but his voice was swallowed by silence so deep it hurt. The sound vanished. No wind, no breath, no heartbeat. Just a vast, oppressive stillness pressing against their skulls. Then came the whisper. Not through the air, but inside their minds. "Why did you return?" The voice was not one, but many. Male, female, old, young, layered together into something impossibly human. Lyra fell to her knees. "We thought you were gone," she whispered. "We came to learn." The silence stretched, long and suffocating. "You learned nothing." The shadows moved closer, their outlines flickering like ghosts caught between worlds. Tyrax aimed his weapon and fired, though there was no power left to feed it. "Identify yourselves," he roared. The answer came like a chill wind through his bones. "We are what remains when silence is learned too late." The figures closed in. One reached toward him, its hand pale and half-transparent, eyes like hollow stars. Tyrax swung his blade, but it passed through air. Pain seared his mind. Not physical, but psychic. A burning in the soul itself. He saw flashes of images, cities burning, skies filled with fire, oceans boiling, humanity screaming not in defeat, but in transformation. They hadn't died. They had changed. The last act of a dying species wasn't destruction. It was evolution beyond flesh. They had abandoned the material, left their world to heal. Their essence merged with the planet itself. The silence wasn't absence. It was warning. The crew broke. Some ran into the forest, their screams fading into the dark. Others simply froze, eyes blank, as if erased. Lyra clung to the ground, whispering fragments of prayer in her tongue. Tyrax fought to stay conscious, his mind assaulted by visions of what humanity had become. No longer limited by biology or technology, existing everywhere, in every atom of their home. They had become the silence itself. "We were loud once," the voices said. "Too loud. We reached across the stars, and the stars screamed back. So we learned to whisper." The air shimmered with unseen energy. The shuttles began to disintegrate molecule by molecule, drawn upward into glowing streams that vanished into the sky. "What do you want from us?" Lyra cried. The answer came like thunder without sound. "To remember why you should fear quiet places." When the Vigilant Spear's orbiting crew tried to contact the landing team again, there was no response. The telemetry showed only static, and a single rising energy signature spreading across the planet's surface. Within minutes, it engulfed the atmosphere. The ship's systems began to fail one by one, lights dimming as the silence reached them too. The helmsman looked to Tyrax's second-in-command. "It's everywhere," he whispered, "like it's inside the ship." The last thing they heard before total blackout was a faint human voice through the comms, whispering as if from deep underwater, "Leave us our silence." The Vigilant Spear never returned from Sol space. Its wreckage was never found. But a week later, every relay on the edge of the quarantined sector began transmitting the same signal. Old Earth code, repeating endlessly, "Do not come here. Let the quiet keep you alive." The Council sealed the system again, this time forever. They marked it red on every star map and erased its coordinates from public archives. And across the galaxy, the silence of Earth became legend once more, until curiosity would someday tempt another fool to ask what had happened to the humans who learned to whisper in the dark. The council chamber was dark, its domed ceiling shimmering faintly with the holographic projection of Sol's ghostly blue sphere. The air was thick with tension as delegates whispered behind layered translator fields, their voices blending into a low hum of unease. The disappearance of the Vigilant Spear had shattered 4 centuries of complacency. For generations, the idea of humanity had been a distant cautionary tale, a fable whispered to cadets about why one should not underestimate Deathworld species. But now there was proof that the silence of Earth was not death. It was something else, something alive and watching. The Aurelian scholar Lyra's final transmissions had been recovered from the edge of the signal storm, fragmented but clear enough to send waves of fear through the council. Her last message was not words but an image. Earth seen from orbit, its clouds forming patterns that resembled faces, faint and vast, as though the planet itself were aware of being observed. "It is not extinction," she had written. "It is transformation. They became the quiet." The council debated what that meant for weeks. Some wanted to destroy the system entirely, to bomb it with stellar disruptors and erase the threat. Others argued that such an act could awaken whatever had silenced the first expedition. The old rule, "Do not disturb the worlds that silence themselves," was invoked again and again, but now it sounded less like policy and more like prayer. Commander Ison Kareth of the Serath Union sat apart from the others, watching the debate unfold with detached calm. His species, tall and obsidian-skinned, were known for their cold logic, but even he felt the unease in the air. He had studied human history for most of his career, fascinated by their paradoxes, their genius for creation matched only by their obsession with destruction. He had read about their wars, their art, their relentless drive to reach beyond themselves, and he, more than most, understood what made them dangerous. They had a pattern. Every time humanity faced extinction, they changed. They adapted, twisted themselves into something harder, faster, crueler, or kinder, whatever survival demanded. The silence, Kareth thought, was not surrender. It was metamorphosis. So when the Council voted to send a second mission, this time under the direct supervision of its most powerful factions, Kareth volunteered without hesitation. He wanted to see what humanity had become. The ship chosen for the mission was the Ardent Horizon, a vessel unlike any before it. Its hull was layered in psionic shielding, its crew equipped with neural dampeners designed to resist mental interference. 50 beings from 20 species boarded her. Scientists, soldiers, empaths, xenobiologists, and 2 archivists sworn to record everything. Their orders were simple: investigate the signal, retrieve any surviving data from the Vigilant Spear, and return immediately. No colonization, no experimentation, no contact. The Council had learned its lesson, or so it thought. As the Ardent Horizon slipped through the void toward Sul, the crew spoke little. Even the ship's AI seemed subdued, its voice softer, almost reverent when speaking of their destination. "Approaching restricted sector," it whispered as the stars began to thin. "Residual quantum noise detected. Recommend caution." Kareth stood at the viewport, watching the faint shimmer of the distant sun grow brighter. "Begin deceleration," he ordered, "and record everything. Even silence has a story." The first anomaly appeared before they even entered the system. The ship's long-range sensors detected a faint field around the Oort cloud, a kind of static barrier that disrupted conventional scanning. It wasn't energy, not in any form they recognized. It was more like a thought, broad, diffuse, resonating across every particle. The Aurelian linguist aboard, Dr. Vale, theorized that it was communication. A perimeter warning, he said, his silver eyes narrowing, the same way certain animals mark territory. But this is linguistic, not biological. The field pulsed in rhythm, faint but deliberate like a heartbeat. Translation? Kareth asked. Vile hesitated. Roughly, it says, stay asleep. The words unsettled everyone on the bridge. Sleep implied dreaming. Dreaming implied something that could wake. When they finally reached the edge of Earth's orbit, the Ardent Horizon's instruments went blind. Every scan came back blank, as if the planet refused to be measured. The shields crackled with energy. The crew felt pressure behind their eyes, subtle at first, then growing, like someone whispering at the edge of hearing. Kareth activated the neural dampeners, but the sensation persisted, more emotional than auditory. It wasn't words. It was awareness. The planet knew they were there. The AI began reporting inconsistencies. The same timestamp repeated twice, logs rewriting themselves, sensor data fluctuating between impossible values. And then, without command, the ship's main display lit up. A human face appeared, flickering, translucent, made of static and light. It looked young, almost kind. Its eyes were blue like the oceans below. "You shouldn't have come," it said. The crew froze. Kareth felt his throat tighten. "Identify yourself," he said evenly. The face tilted slightly as if considering the question. "We are what remains of them. You would call us human once." Its tone was soft but carried weight beyond comprehension. "The others before you, your soldiers, they disturbed what should have been left in peace. We gave them mercy." Kareth felt his pulse quicken. "Mercy?" he repeated. The face flickered, and for a moment the entire bridge seemed to warp. The walls breathing, the lights dimming like eyelids closing. "Mercy," the voice repeated. "We made them quiet. You will not be so easily forgiven." The image dissolved into static, leaving only the hum of the ship's reactors. For a moment no one moved. Then the AI spoke in a trembling voice. "Incoming gravitational anomaly, originating from the planet itself." The ship lurched as if caught by invisible hands. Warning lights flared crimson. "It's pulling us in," shouted the helmsman. "We can't break free." Kareth gritted his teeth. "Divert all power to engines." The deck trembled, and the stars outside blurred into streaks of white. The planet below grew larger, impossibly fast. And then suddenly the pull stopped. Everything went still. The stars returned to normal. The planet floated peacefully beneath them, serene and quiet as before. "Status?" Kareth demanded. The navigator swallowed hard. We didn't move, Commander. The readings show we're exactly where we were before the anomaly began." Kareth's skin prickled. "Then what just happened?" The AI responded, voice trembling with something like fear. "For 12 seconds, time ceased to progress. We were paused." The word hung in the air like a curse. "Paused?" Vial whispered. "By what?" No one answered. They decided to send drones instead of landing. Each drone was shielded, autonomous, designed to transmit data instantly before destruction. They launched 12. None returned. But one, just one, sent back a final image before the signal cut out. It showed a city. Not ruins, not overgrown wilderness. A city of impossible design, shimmering like crystal, rising from the Earth's surface as if grown rather than built. And in the sky above it, faint shapes moved. Humanoid, luminous, transparent. Thousands of them. The feed died moments later, replaced by that same pulse they had detected before. This time, Vial translated without hesitation. It says, "We remember your noise." Fear spread through the crew like fire through dry grass. The empaths began to break first, clutching their heads, whispering things that made no sense. "They're awake," one cried. "They're looking through us." The AI began muttering corrupted data, lines of human speech buried within code. "We learned quiet." "You never did." Kareth made the call to retreat. "Prepare for jump," he ordered. But when the engines primed, the coordinates scrambled themselves. The Navcom refused to plot any course that led away from Earth. "It's locking us here," the helmsman whispered. Kareth's jaw clenched. "Override it manually." The lights dimmed again, the hum of the ship lowering to a heartbeat rhythm. Then the voice returned, everywhere at once. "You reached for the stars once, and we reached back. Now you come again, and bring the noise with you. Do you not understand? The quiet is protection." Kareth stepped forward. "Protection from what?" Silence answered. Then the stars flickered outside the viewport. Not dimming, but vanishing, one by one, as if swallowed by invisible darkness. Vile gasped. "They're hiding us from the galaxy," he whispered. "Like closing curtains." The crew watched in horror as the void expanded, sealing them in a sphere of total black. The ship's external sensors reported nothing. No stars, no space, no time. Only a constant vibration, low and deep, as if something vast was breathing around them. Then the voice returned, softer now. "You don't know what listens beyond. We silenced ourselves to survive. You will do the same. Or you will bring it here." Kareth stared at the darkness and understood. The humans hadn't hidden out of pride or power. They had hidden out of fear. Fear of something greater, something they had provoked. The AI began to shake violently, its voice fracturing. "They're inside our systems!" It screamed. Screens filled with human text, old binary fragments, images of faces, cities, laughter, and then a single line appeared in every language at once. "You were warned to let us rest." The ship buckled as if struck by an unseen force. Kareth fell to his knees, his vision swimming. He saw Earth again through the viewport, vast and radiant, but its oceans were glowing faintly now, pulsing like veins of light. He realized then that the planet wasn't alive. It was awake. Every molecule, every atom resonated with human consciousness. The silence wasn't absence. It was containment. Humanity had become the wall between the galaxy and something that should never wake. The ship's core overloaded. The AI screamed and went silent, and through the chaos, Kareth heard the voice one last time. Not through speakers, not through air, but inside his very mind. "Run if you can. The quiet cannot hold forever." And then everything went white. The ardent horizon reappeared outside the system 5 hours later. Adrift, its crew comatose, its black box corrupted beyond repair. Except for one single phrase etched into its memory core in perfect, human handwriting. "They feared our silence, and they should have." The ardent horizon's return should have been impossible. The Council knew this. It had vanished from sensors, swallowed by Earth's anomaly, its crew presumed lost. Yet 1 standard week later, the ship drifted into the core system like a phantom, its hull scarred by patterns that no analysis could explain. Lines etched in perfect fractals, spiraling out from the bow as though written by the hand of something vast and deliberate. The vessel's power core was dead, its life support dormant, but within the crew still breathed. 50 beings lay in cryogenic suspension, eyes open, pupils dilated, their bodies locked in the stillness between life and death. None moved, none aged. They were frozen not by machinery but by will. The ship had returned them, intact, preserved, silent. When the recovery team approached, their sensors failed. The moment they crossed into range of the ardent horizon, their own communications went dead, and a pulse of low-frequency vibration rippled through every system. It wasn't noise. It was language, and though it was indecipherable at first, the AI linguists later confirmed what the pattern said. One word, repeated endlessly. "Listen." The Council met in emergency session for the first time in centuries. The holographic chamber flickered with 1,000 faces, representing 57 civilizations, all powerful, all terrified. News of the anomaly had already spread through the outer colonies. Trade routes near the Sol perimeter had gone dark. Several freighters reported seeing mirages in deep space, faint blue lights forming human silhouettes that faded when approached. Others spoke of hearing whispers over radio frequencies too high for organic speech. The fear spread faster than reason. To calm the panic, The Council ordered the Ardent Horizon quarantined at a deep space research station orbiting Joran 6, a sterile world where nothing lived. The scientists there began dissecting the data from the ship's core, desperate to find answers. But all they found were contradictions, logs that rewrote themselves, images that changed depending on who viewed them. One recording in particular drew their attention, a fragment recovered from the ship's final hours. It showed Commander Kareth standing before the viewport, his face pale and drawn, whispering, "They were never silent. We just forgot how to hear them." The footage ended abruptly, followed by a brief flash of an unknown constellation, one that did not exist anywhere in galactic records. Weeks passed. The crew remained unresponsive. Medically, they were perfect. No trauma, no cellular decay. But their neural activity was wrong. Every brainwave synchronized, rising and falling in unison, matching a rhythm that no machine could measure. The station's biologists called it resonance. The theologians called it communion. When one researcher leaned too close to the cryo chamber, she swore she heard a whisper. "Do you hear it too?" she claimed it said. By the next morning, she was gone. Her clothes lay folded neatly beside the pod. There was no trace of where she went. The security footage showed only a blur of blue light, expanding and vanishing into the floor. The Council dismissed it as psychological stress. But among the staff of Joran 6, rumors began to spread. They said the silence wasn't empty. It was a doorway. A month later, the Council received a signal from the station. It came through every frequency, every network simultaneously, repeating the same short message. "They are awake." The transmission lasted 6 minutes, then cut off. The rescue fleet sent to investigate found the station orbiting peacefully. Its lights dimmed. Inside, everything was in order. The laboratories pristine. The corridors spotless. But every single being aboard, 216 souls, had vanished. The logs showed no alarms, no struggles, no signs of departure. The Ardent Horizon's containment chamber stood open, the cryopods empty. Only one new entry appeared in the ship's database, written in human script. "You cannot cage the quiet. It comes when called." The Council declared the entire sector forbidden. They sealed Joran 6, posted automated sentinels, and erased the coordinates from navigation charts. Yet the whispers persisted. Ships passing within light years of Sol space reported dreams, shared collective dreams, of oceans and blue skies, and voices speaking softly. "We told you to let us rest." But not all obeyed. Across the galaxy, factions began to fracture. Some believed the humans were gods, beings who had ascended beyond flesh, and now watched over the galaxy. Cults formed, building temples filled with recordings of Earth's ancient music. Others saw them as monsters, predators waiting beneath the calm, ready to reclaim what they once ruled. One admiral, a Pharaon named Kel-Threx, proposed annihilating the entire Sol system with a singularity warhead. "Better ash than uncertainty," he said before the Council. "If they still exist, they are a threat beyond measure. And if they don't, then we lose nothing." His motion was denied, but the idea festered in the shadows of the Dominion fleets. Kareth's final message haunted every broadcast, repeated endlessly by those who studied the old recordings. They feared our silence, and they should have. It became a mantra, a warning, a prophecy. Years passed, and the galaxy grew restless again. The border systems near the galactic rim began to vanish, colonies going dark without distress calls, their stars dimming unnaturally. Explorers sent to investigate never returned. When long-range observatories tried to scan those sectors, they found only emptiness, regions of space where light itself refused to pass. And then the dreams began to spread. Entire planets reported synchronized nightmares. People across different worlds, different species, described the same vision. A blue world wrapped in light, whispering through their sleep. "You woke it. Now you must listen." Panic swept through the systems. The Council convened once more, their oldest members trembling. One of them, an ancient Zur diplomat named Havatol, broke the silence with shaking claws. "They weren't hiding from us," she said. "They were hiding from something else, something that listens for sound." Her words struck the chamber like a blade. "And now," she whispered, "we've made too much noise." The council scrambled to act. They dispatched probe fleets to the periphery, hoping to find patterns in the disappearances. What they found was worse than anyone imagined. The edges of the galaxy itself seemed to be unraveling. Energy readings fell to zero. Quantum particles slowed, time itself dragging as if submerged in deep water. Stars dimmed not from exhaustion but erasure, light collapsing inward, devoured by invisible silence. The scientists called it a null front. The theologians called it the quieting. Whatever it was spreading outward from the galactic rim toward the core, and its point of origin, when traced mathematically, converged on a single coordinate. Sol panic erupted. Fleets mobilized. Civilizations that had once competed for territory now fought over escape routes. The Council, desperate, turned to the forbidden. They ordered contact. If humanity had become the silence, perhaps they could command it. They reactivated the old relay network, broadcasting through every channel, every frequency, pleading with the vanished humans. "If you still exist, we need your help. The quiet is spreading. It's eating everything." For days there was no answer. Then, on the seventh night, the stars above the capital world flickered. Every screen, every speaker, every implant lit with a single phrase, whispered in the same calm human voice that had haunted the ardent horizon. "You called it. You always do." The voice paused, like an ancient sigh carried across eternity. "We tried to hold it. We tried to warn you, but now it hears you too." Across the galaxy, the quieting accelerated. Ships caught in its edge simply vanished, their mass absorbed into something that wasn't space. Planets turned dark. The sound of the universe itself, the background hum of radiation and particle noise, began to fade. For the first time in recorded history, the cosmos grew still. The only place untouched was Sol. Its blue star shone brighter than ever, and around Earth, faint rings of light began to form, layers of luminescent energy pulsing like a heartbeat. Observers called it the halo. The Council saw it for what it was, a barrier. Humanity was holding the quiet back. They were the wall between existence and whatever waited beyond. Kareth had been right. They had learned silence not as surrender, but as sacrifice. In desperation, the Council sent one final envoy to Sol, a single ship, unarmed, carrying emissaries from every surviving species. Their mission was to beg. When they reached the system, the void felt heavier than before. Space bent unnaturally, and every sensor screamed interference. The AI guiding the vessel reported whispers in the data, human words repeating through the static. "You shouldn't have come. You never listen." The crew pressed on, driven by desperation. As they approached Earth, they saw the halo in full, a lattice of pure energy, shifting like an ocean of light. Within it, something moved. Not ships, not people, shapes, vast and indistinct, like silhouettes of human figures stretching across the atmosphere, their outlines merging with the clouds. The emissaries sent their plea through every channel. "Please," said the eldest among them, voice trembling, "save us." The response came not as sound, but as understanding. A collective voice spoke in their minds, each syllable heavy with sorrow. "We did once. We tried to save ourselves and the galaxy and everything beyond. But we learned too late that some things cannot be fought with words or weapons. Only with silence." The halo flared, rippling outward in waves that shook the stars. "You feared our silence. You were right to, because silence is the only thing keeping it asleep." The ship's systems overloaded. Lights dimmed. The crew began to cry, not from pain, but from the weight of what they now knew. "What is it?" one whispered. The answer came gently, almost lovingly. "What waits beyond sound? What answers when the universe speaks too loudly? We called it the listener, and you woke it." The halo pulsed again, and the ship was pushed backward, expelled from Sol like a leaf caught in a storm. When they regained control, they were light years away. Their instruments burned, their bodies unharmed. But each emissary carried a scar behind their eyes, a mark, faint and glowing, shaped like a human fingerprint. The Council listened to their report in silence. None spoke for hours after. When at last the eldest emissary stood, His voice was barely a whisper. "They are not our enemies," he said. "They are the wall that keeps the end away." Outside, in the depths of space, the quieting continued to spread. But at its heart, one world still shone, a single blue light in a darkening universe, humming softly with the silence of humanity, and the faint echo of their warning that would outlive the stars themselves. The galaxy had always believed it understood fear, of death, of war, of extinction, but none of those things compared to the dread that followed the quieting. It was not violence that terrified them, not the flash of weapons or the collapse of empires. It was the absence of everything. No explosions, no light, no final screams. Entire star systems vanished like breath on glass. Worlds that had thrived for millennia were gone overnight, their orbits erased, their suns replaced by spheres of stillness that reflected no light, absorbed all radiation, and hummed faintly with something deeper than gravity. The Council's greatest minds tried to understand it, to measure it, to name it, but there were no units for nothingness. Instruments failed the moment they neared the front. Even light, the oldest traveler of all, slowed there, stretched thin and tired before fading completely. And yet, through the growing dark, Earth remained, a beacon in the void, glowing faintly blue, surrounded by that shifting halo of light that pulsed like a living heart. The surviving civilizations gathered near its distant edge, drawn not by hope, but by necessity. The last refuge of sound in a dying universe was the homeworld they had once feared, mocked, and exiled. The refugees came in silence. Fleet after fleet of ships limped through what little space remained, guided by failing engines and ancient faith. They came from worlds no one remembered anymore, carrying species that no longer spoke, only stared. When they reached Sol's perimeter, they met the wall, the halo that shimmered like the horizon of a dream. Some ships tried to cross. None succeeded. The barrier rippled and whispered, "Be still." Those who disobeyed vanished in blue light, leaving behind echoes that hung in the vacuum like fading songs. The Council, what was left of it, set up orbiting stations beyond the halo's reach, drifting among the ruins of old satellites. They could see Earth below, still whole, oceans glinting faintly beneath the soft protection of the light. But what haunted them most was not the sight of the planet itself. It was what they saw moving across it. Shadows, human silhouettes, thousands of them, walking across continents in patterns that made no sense, sometimes merging, sometimes separating, like waves of smoke forming a language only the dead could read. It was Admiral Kel Threx who broke first. The same one who once demanded Earth's destruction now sat trembling aboard the command bridge of the Vigilant Star, staring into the halo as though it might answer him. "They're not alive," he whispered to his crew. "They're echoes, or memories, or something worse." His officers dared not respond. He was right, though. They all felt it. The presence in the silence, the sense that the humans were there, but not as flesh and bone. They had become part of something larger, something old. The scientists called it a collective quantum field. The priests called it ascension. But the word that spread through the fleets was simpler, more primal. Ghosts. Humanity had become ghosts of light, and yet even ghosts had purpose. When the quieting crept closer, the halo flared brighter, pushing it back. For a time it worked. The refugees watched in awe as the blue radiance expanded, holding back the nothingness like a tide against an invisible shore. The humans were fighting still, even beyond death, holding the universe together through sheer will. Then came the sound. At first it was faint, an echo beneath hearing, a tremor in the vacuum. It wasn't real sound, not in the physical sense. It was pressure against the soul, vibration in the fabric of being. The listener had noticed. The thing humanity had spoken of in whispers, the ancient awareness that fed on noise, on existence itself, had awoken fully now. It moved through the darkness not as a creature, but as an idea, a thought vast enough to crush galaxies. The halo flickered, and for the first time something answered from the other side. A single note. It was low, deep, endless, a resonance so vast it made the cosmos tremble. Planets shattered like glass, and even light bent inward toward it. The refugees screamed without voices as the note burrowed into their minds, pulling memories apart like threads. Entire species forgot themselves in seconds. Languages, histories, names, gone. All that remained was the quiet. The listener was not destroying. It was unmaking, rewriting reality into its own stillness. The council fell apart in chaos. Some begged the humans to act. Others fired weapons at the halo in panic, hoping somehow to awaken what was left inside. Their blasts struck the barrier and dissolved into blue flame. And then finally the humans answered. The light of Earth intensified until it filled the entire system. The halo expanded, swallowing the moon, the orbiting wrecks, the scattered fleets. Within it, everything slowed to silence, but not death. Those inside felt time stretch and dissolve. They saw things, visions of what had been and what might never be. They saw Earth before the fall, before the wars, before the silence. Children laughing, oceans roaring, storms rolling across cities of steel and glass. They saw the last of humanity standing beneath a black sky, holding hands as the stars dimmed, whispering words no one else could understand. And then they heard it, the same voice that had haunted the galaxy for centuries, but now clearer, stronger, filled with an infinite sorrow. We held it as long as we could, but it grows stronger with every sound, every thought. We are fading, and soon so will you. Unless, the voice paused as if waiting, unless we teach you how to listen. The barrier trembled. Beams of light stretched outward from Earth, connecting to the ships beyond, wrapping them in shimmering threads. Every being touched by it felt their thoughts quiet. The fear, the noise, the endless screaming of survival, all of it dimmed. In its place came a strange peace, a deep understanding that was more than words. They saw the universe not as endless stars, but as one great song, each particle, each atom vibrating in harmony. And they saw what the listener was. Not evil, not a god, but hunger. It fed on chaos, on the discord of a universe that had forgotten its own rhythm. Humanity had learned that too late, when their machines, their wars, their noise had drawn it close. So they had done the only thing left. They had gone silent. They had become the opposite of the listener. Pure stillness, the harmony that kept the song alive. But now the silence was breaking. The galaxies had grown loud again. And so to survive, humanity had to teach the others how to be still. The refugees began to change. The ships nearest to the halo stopped transmitting. Their crews no longer panicked or prayed. They simply listened. The vibrations passing through their hulls resonated with their hearts, their thoughts, their very atoms. For a moment, every living being within reach understood what it meant to be quiet. And in that moment, the listener hesitated. The black tide paused at the edge of Sol, trembling against the halo's light, like a wave meeting a cliff. Humanity's voices, thousands of them, rose together from within the light, not in speech, but in harmony. It was not music, not in the way the council's instruments understood it. It was the memory of sound, the echo of life's first breath carried through a dying universe. The listener recoiled. The silence fought the stillness, paradox meeting paradox. Reality shuddered. Some ships cracked under the pressure. The stars themselves seemed to hum, each one flickering in time with the impossible rhythm. And then something happened that no one expected. The halo opened. From its heart descended shapes, human in outline but vast, their forms woven from light and memory. They stood upon nothing, taller than mountains, brighter than suns, and yet their faces were kind, weary, familiar. They looked upon the frightened fleets and spoke without sound. "You were right to fear us," they said, "because we became what we had to be." Their light reached out, touching the dying stars beyond Sol, reigniting them for moments before they dimmed again. "But we can't hold forever. Not alone." Their hands rose, and the halo expanded once more, reaching for the ships, the stations, the billions who still lived. "Join us, not as soldiers, as silence." The choice was no longer spoken. It was felt, and slowly, one by one, they accepted. Minds opened, thoughts quieted. The noise of fear ceased. Species that had never agreed on anything before united in perfect absolute stillness, and together they listened. The effect was immediate. The listener screamed, not in fury but in confusion. For the first time it was not the only silence in the void. The united minds of billions, bound by the quiet humanity had taught, resonated in harmony, forming a barrier far stronger than the halo had ever been. The quieting slowed, then stopped. Stars flickered back to life. The nothingness retreated, pushed to the far edges of existence where even thought could not reach. And in the center of it all, Earth shone brighter than ever, wrapped in the calm of a billion listening souls. Humanity had saved the galaxy not through war, but through stillness. They had taught the others what it meant to survive without noise, to fight without violence, to live without fear. But it came at a cost, for as the light faded, so too did the human forms within it. They dissolved into the glow, their voices merging into the greater harmony. When the refugees looked upon Earth again, they saw only the planet, peaceful and blue, turning slowly under a calm sky. The halo dimmed, its work complete. The silence that followed was not empty. It was sacred, and far beyond, at the edge of what remained of creation, the listener watched. It could not feed any more. The universe was no longer a cacophony of desperate noise, but a song of balance, and the hunger had no place in it. It drifted back into the dark between realities, where even gods dare not dream. For the first time since the dawn of time, it too fell silent. The silence that followed the war of stillness lasted for generations. No one could say how long exactly, because time itself felt different now. Softer, slower, like the universe had learned to breathe again. The halo around Earth no longer pulsed with fierce energy. It glowed gently, like the heartbeat of something sleeping peacefully after a long vigil. Where once fleets had drifted in chaos and terror, now thousands of vessels orbited in reverence. They called it the sanctuary, the last place of soundless peace. And though the humans themselves had faded into light, their presence was everywhere, woven into the fabric of the stars, whispered through gravity, reflected in the calm between pulses of cosmic radiation. The galaxy rebuilt itself not through conquest, but through memory. The Council was no more. It had dissolved in the last war against the quieting. In its place rose the Concord of Silence, a gathering of species bound by an oath not to shout into the void again. They spoke softly. They built slowly, and they listened deeply. They no longer sent reckless signals into the dark, no longer screamed their names across the stars. Every colony, every station, every newborn world began with the same ritual. A moment of silence for the humans who had once been feared, then forgotten, then rediscovered too late. Lyra's journal was found floating near the edge of Sol centuries later, preserved perfectly within a crystalline pod of unknown origin. Some said it had been left by the humans themselves, others that the light had shaped it from her thoughts before she vanished. No one could prove either way, but the words within it became scripture across the Concord. She had written not as a scientist, nor as a survivor, but as someone who had seen truth stripped bare. "We thought the silence meant death," she wrote, "but it was mercy. We feared the quiet because we filled our lives with noise to drown out the void inside us. The humans were the first to listen, and by listening, they became eternal." Her last entry ended with a plea. "When the stars grow loud again, remember this: silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of understanding." For centuries, that single line was carved onto monuments, sung in prayers, and encoded into the nav archives of every ship that sailed the new starways. It became the creed of the new age, a promise that the galaxy would never repeat the mistakes of its forebears. But promises, like light, eventually fade. The generations born after the quieting never saw the horror their ancestors had endured. To them, the listener was a myth, a bedtime cautionary tale told by elders who spoke in hushed tones of hungering darkness. The Concord prospered, old rivalries healed, the silence held, and in its safety, curiosity awoke again. It began small, scholars questioning the limits of the halo, explorers wondering what lay beyond its shimmering horizon. Then came whispers of something stirring near the edge of the void, faint anomalies that pulsed like heartbeats in deep space. The council of listeners convened to discuss it, and for the first time in centuries, voices rose in debate. Fear clashed with wonder, restraint with desire. Some argued that humanity's gift was not meant to cage them forever, that the silence had been a lesson, not a prison. Others warned that to break it was to invite the dark back in. No one noticed when the transmissions began again. Tiny bursts of code, faint as sighs, echoing from one forgotten outpost to another. Curiosity, after all, was an old habit, hard to silence forever. Among those born in this new age was a child named Saren, of the Lyren species, a race of slender, luminescent beings whose voices could weave harmonics so precise they could bend metal. Her people had been among the last saved by humanity's final act, and they revered the silence like divinity. Yet Saren was restless. From a young age she heard things others did not, a faint murmur beneath the quiet, like a song half-remembered. When she grew old enough to study at the Archive of Sol, she devoted herself to the old records, to the human transmissions preserved in the orbital sanctums. The archivists warned her not to linger too long within the recordings. They said the human frequencies could stir strange dreams. But she couldn't stop. The deeper she listened, the more she felt the presence of something vast but kind, like a hand resting gently on her shoulder. It was not the listener. Of that she was certain. This was something else, something that watched over the silence rather than devoured it. And one night, as she sat alone in the observation dome, staring down at the tranquil glow of Earth, she heard it clearly for the first time. A voice, soft as wind through leaves. "You are not alone." She froze, heart hammering in her chest. The voice wasn't external. It was inside her mind, woven through her thoughts. "Who are you?" she whispered aloud, though sound was forbidden in the sanctum. The answer came not in words, but in feeling, a rush of warmth, sorrow, pride. "We were, we are, we will be." Images flooded her mind. Cities of glass, oceans boiling under fire, the last humans standing beneath a blackened sky, whispering into the dark. Then she saw them dissolve into light, their forms scattering across the stars, each fragment becoming part of the great stillness. And in that instant, she understood. The humans hadn't disappeared. They were still there, spread through the cosmos like dust, watching, waiting. Their silence wasn't absence. It was vigilance. They had become guardians of balance, ensuring the listener would never return. But something had changed. Their light was fading. The universe, healed but restless, was stirring again. And if it awoke fully, the quieting would begin anew. Saren knew what she had to do. She left the sanctum the next day without permission, taking an old vessel built in the pre-conquered days. It was small, unstable, and carried a forbidden drive capable of piercing the halo's outer edge. The elders tried to stop her, but the halo itself parted for her passage, as though recognizing her intent. Her ship descended toward Earth, through the luminous shroud that shimmered like morning mist. For the first time in millennia, a living being touched the atmosphere of humanity's home. She expected ash and ruin. What she found instead was a world reborn. Forests blanketed the continents, oceans shimmered with crystal clarity, and the ruins of ancient cities stood half-swallowed by nature, glowing faintly with an energy that was neither technological nor magical, but something between the two. And there, in the heart of what had once been North America, she saw them. Figures of light walking through the air, their outlines human, their faces serene. They turned toward her as she stepped from her ship, and the air thrummed softly with their presence. "You came," they said, voices overlapping in beautiful harmony. She fell to her knees. "You're real," she breathed. "As real as silence can be," they answered, and the closest one, its form flickering like sunlight on water, reached out and touched her forehead. In that moment, Saren saw everything. She saw the humans before their transcendence, fighting the listener with knowledge and sacrifice. She saw how they had turned their consciousness into the frequency of stillness itself, weaving themselves into the heartbeat of their planet. They had become the guardians of equilibrium, ensuring that sound and silence remained in balance. But the galaxy had grown loud again. The return of curiosity, of argument, of ambition. It was all the beginning of a song that might draw the listener once more. "Then teach us again," she whispered. "Teach us how to listen." The light around her brightened, and the human forms smiled. "We can only guide." The harmony must be sung by new voices now. Their energy flowed into her ship, into the very air. She felt her mind expand, her senses stretch until she could hear the heartbeat of the planet, the hum of atoms, the faint echo of the stars. And then, as gently as they had appeared, the humans faded into the wind, leaving her alone beneath a sky filled with auroras of impossible color. When Saren returned to the stars, she was changed. Her voice carried resonance that no creature had heard since the last human breath. The Concord listened when she spoke, not because of authority, but because her tone made the air itself vibrate with memory. She told them what she had learned, that the silence was not an end but a balance, that life must hum softly, not roar. The Concord wept. They renamed themselves the Keepers of the Echo, and under her guidance, they began a new era, one not of fear, but of understanding. They rebuilt their cities with care, designed their machines to sing in harmony with the stars, and for the first time in recorded history, peace was not forced, but chosen. The halo around Earth pulsed once more, not as a warning but as a promise, and though the listener still lurked in the farthest corners of creation, it never dared return. It knew that the universe had changed, that silence was no longer something to consume, but something that could stand against it. The humans, those beings once deemed dangerous, chaotic, unworthy, had become the architects of eternity. Their legacy endured not in monuments or technology, but in the quiet between the stars, in every moment when a being looked up at the sky and simply listened. Sometimes, travelers passing near Sol would swear they could hear a faint hum through the vacuum, like distant voices carried on starlight, and if they listened closely enough, they could make out the words that began it all, a whisper from the blue world below. "We are still here.